All right, we're recording. So this is a little different. I'm used to doing these live. I do most of my streams and shows live, and recently, of course, I'm no, oh shoot, his name just flew right out of my head. I'm no Henry Cavill, but I had seen a headline on PC, was it PC Gamer, that said that because of his video, for some reason it showed that building a PC is unattainable or an unreachable goal for people. And I think that's horse crap. And while I don't have the body or the platform, I figured why not join Henry in showing you guys a computer build. I was doing this anyway. I was going to build a computer anyway. I figured why not show you guys. I got all the parts in. But anyway, to get all the preview stuff out of the way, I'm Xamot, also known as Trevor. Frags the Beer Network is my YouTube channel, which is where you're probably watching this. I normally do my stuff live, and we are not in my normal studio. As you can tell, we are in my dining room. Sound is not perfect. The lighting is not great. But hopefully you will get something out of this, and you will see that it's not that difficult to build a computer. It's not unattainable to build your own computer. And I know there's a couple people already in my Twitter feed who have commented on being a little nervous about building their first computer. So maybe this will help. So we're going to run through some quick stuff. Prepare. When you're building a computer, the last thing you want to do is be running around trying to find everything. Oh shoot, by the way, anyway, be sure to like, comment, subscribe if you need beard products, because I am a spokesperson for thebeardstruggle.com. Check out their products. You can save 15% with using BeardWizard99 as your coupon code. That's the only ad you're ever going to see on my content, because I don't like ads, but I use that product, so why not? First things first, you're going to want something to drink, but keep it away from the computer. So, you know, have your beer, have your soda, whatever it is. Put it somewhere else. So this is going over here on the counter. Sorry, that was probably a loud clanking sound. All right, so we're going to start. I've got a case. I went with a full tower. I always do. I actually built my first computer in a mid tower. And then I built my next one in a full tower, and I've never gone back. This is actually a little bit larger than your standard full tower, because it also has a spot for the radiator, for the CPU cooler, for the what do you call it, the water cooling, closed loop water cooling. This is a Thermaltake, that's right, Thermaltake Core X71 case. It has got these cool magnetic filters, which is going to be hard to see on the screen, but they go over every vent port, which is kind of nice. They keep some of the, should hopefully keep some of the dust out. We will find out over the coming months and years to see, but I have a feeling that it will be much easier to keep the dust out and clean the dust off the vents with these. It's on every single port, including the bottom. There's one sticking off the bottom. Most of your new cases also have a back panel that comes off so you can route your cabling behind. This one also has two hard drive trays behind that panel as well. And everything is pre-routed from the front panel to the back panel and all of that stuff. I did remove, it has a vertical carrier for the video card. I will not be using that. It's going to be too close to the side of the case, and I don't think that's a good idea, and I also don't think I need it. I'm not going to be water cooling the GPU, so I don't think it's really that good of an idea to do that. So I went ahead and took the panels off. You want to do that, take all your panels off, be prepared. Some of the tools that you're going to want to have handy, just a screwdriver. If you're thinking about doing any kind of cable management, this is not to cut the cables, this is to cut your wire, your zip ties, your little wire zip ties. And a flashlight. Some people use the head flashlight. That's a good idea. It keeps your hands free. I don't have one, but everything in your case is black. Most of the stuff on your motherboard is black. Most of the things on your parts are black. It's going to be difficult to see plugs and ports and descriptions and names of things if you don't have that. And you're also probably hearing my dog clicking around. Apologies. We're on a tile floor and he's wandering because I'm not sitting down, so he can't sit down and relax. All right, so we're going to set this down, get it on its side. And the first thing you're going to want to get is make sure that you have your case should have come with a case manual and a picture, usually a picture diagram of how everything goes together. But the important part is the case manual, because that's going to describe some of the built-in front panel cords and where they should go. So this, in conjunction with your motherboard manual, is going to help you plug everything in the right places and make sure everything gets to where it needs to go. The one thing to remember with building this, because I know a couple of my followers were nervous about building their own computer and damaging things, this is going to crinkle a little bit. Most of the time you can't plug anything in the wrong place. If you do, it really probably just won't boot. But things are designed to fit a certain way, and you'd have to be kind of forcing things to plug things in the wrong port. USB ports, video cards, memory, all of that goes in a certain way. It's really difficult to do those the wrong way unless you're forcing it. So really, don't worry too much about that. It's going to crinkle. The anti-static bag makes a lot of noise. So in your motherboard case, get out all your parts. Usually you have SATA cables. If your manufacturer is nice, they're going to include a connector for the this is called the G connector. But basically all the little plugs from the front panel, like the power button and all of that stuff that plugs into the motherboard, they're all little bitty single plugs. If your manufacturer's nice, they will include a riser or a plug that makes it easy to put them all together, rather than trying to plug them into the motherboard individually, and then you can plug this bigger plug into the motherboard. And then you've got your manual, and sometimes you've got stickers and software, which usually this software, when you get it, is already out of date. This is usually the BIOS software and the drivers. This is almost always out of date when you get it anyway. So almost certainly when you're done and you install Windows, you're going to be downloading all new drivers for your motherboard anyway. So that disk is pretty much useless from the minute it comes out of the box. So get boxes out of your way. You can get another drink because I'm talking here. So I'll be right back. Getting really dry. All right, so we're going to crinkle a little bit again. Now you might be wondering, why am I not using an anti-static bracelet? You can use that if you want. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no, if you have one, use it if you want. The key is to, when you're touching components or when you're moving around a lot, put yourself in contact with the case, with the metal part of your case frame every so often, or when you're handling parts. This discharges any electrostatic you might have from walking around on the carpet and keep you from frying any boards. So I've never had any problems. So it's up to you if you want to use an anti-static bracelet. All right, so hopefully done with the crinkling for a little bit. So one thing that I want to do that I've learned over a couple of times building computers is to check the cooler bracket. And now there's plastic on this thing. Look for, a lot of times they like to, when you get a new phone or when you get a new piece of hardware, they put plastic over the pretty stuff to protect it. Make sure you look for that, especially on your components that are going to be close to the heat source, like your CPU, your GPU. You don't want that plastic melting and becoming a permanent fixture in your case. So double check that you don't have anything. We don't have anything. Oh, I should have told you. So this is a Gigabyte Gigabyte B550 is the motherboard I'm using. It's an AM4 socket, full ATX motherboard. And one thing that I always check is your cooler has got to have a certain bracket layout in order to fit. And in most cases, if you get an AM4 or whatever the current Intel, I'm not an Intel guy, so I don't know what it is, whatever the current Intel is, oh look at that, it came with extra case fans. So this cooler that I bought came with, it looks like, well maybe these just go in front of the radiator, that must be what they are. They're not extra case fans, but there are a lot of parts. So they usually come with their own bracket, and this one looks like it did. And the reason I checked this first is because you may have to remove this on the back of the motherboard, and it's really hard to do once you've attached it to the case. So you're going to want to do that first. So I need to look and see what the AM4 carrier is, or bracket is, for this CPU. Now there's all kinds of parts in here. Try not to get them mixed up with parts that you already have laid out. And what I don't see here is a booklet, a manual, something that tells me which one of these I should be using. I've got the radiator, I've got the fans, I've got the actual cooler that goes on the CPU, but I do not see, is that what this is? Here we go. This is a Master Liquid Cooler Master closed loop GPU cooler. And this tells me how to install it. The first thing I need to look for is how does it attach to the motherboard. It attaches to the motherboard with 4 risers. That's for LGA. I want the AMD, Intel and AMD. Thermal paste, blah, 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 AM4. Okay, so there are 2 handy brackets. And it attaches to the existing AM4 bracket. Beautiful. So I don't have to take anything out yet. So that is good to hear. I can put all this stuff back and set it aside. So there is a, around the GPU, or around the CPU socket, there are these 2 plastic brackets right here that you can't see because this is all black. But it attaches to that. The other thing that I want to point out, you'll see it on yours, you won't be able to see it on mine, but look for a little triangle around your CPU socket, which is this big square plastic black thing in the middle. That little triangle is going to be important when we install our CPU. So I'll point that out to you here in a second. So I've done this a few times. I really don't need the instructions, but you should go through these instructions and see what is the recommended way of installing everything and putting everything in. The one thing you're going to want to be aware of is the risers. So every socket type, oh that's going to be annoying, hook on the outside there. Hopefully you guys can hear me pretty well over the noise. There we go. Alright, so every socket type has screw hole locations every so often. This one is ATX, so it has it in specific locations. And every case is designed for the different size motherboards. This one had the risers pre-installed for me in the ATX format. So if I'd had a micro ATX or whatever, I would have had to take those risers out and follow the directions to put the correct risers in. So make sure you check that. Otherwise your screw holes won't line up, and you want to make sure they're all there. You want to be able to secure all the screw holes in the right spots, or your motherboard won't have the right support when you go to start installing hardware. And you'll notice that because the first build I did in a mid-tower, things didn't line up. and I didn't have enough support under the motherboard, or under where the memory connected, and this one's not lining up either. And when I was pushing the memory in, it was actually bending the board down because it was missing a riser. And it was actually missing a riser because the case was missing something. Now, I don't think, this is weird. Usually these panels are separate, these little covers for the back. This one's not, and for some reason it seems to be causing this board to stick back further than it should. And I'm not getting it lined up with the, I think it'll line up. You don't want to force things, but I may have to push a little bit to get this to line up right. There we go. Yeah, you don't want to be too forceful, but you do need to get all the screws attached. And I'm just double checking that I don't have to like break anything to make this work. Okay, I think that's going to work. All right, so my motherboard parts bag is right here. Or this is, I'm sorry, this is my case parts bag. And a lot of these parts are going to be extra. And the one thing that's nice about that is that sometimes you need extra parts down the road for one reason or another. And so it's not a bad thing to have extra parts. I think it gave me little foam tape covers to put on the motherboard so that the screws don't tighten down too much and damage the motherboard. And that would be interesting because I've never seen that before. Of course, there's no description of it in the actual casebook here. Not every casebook is as useful as every other one. Okay, so the motherboard screws are the flat. They've kind of got a dome shape with a little washer. And no, those little rubber things are not for that. So you want to make sure you use the right screws because they need to be the right size, or you'll wind up stripping something out, or it'll tighten down too far and it won't hold. So I need to find several of these guys. Alright, so I found some of those coming into contact with the case, and I'm going to put one in, and I'm not going to tighten it down all the way yet, because what you don't want to happen, you tighten it down all the way and then you get your board out of whack and one of your screws is off and then you can't get it in, and we all know what that's like. So I'm going to get each one in there so that the motherboard is sitting where I want it. And then we'll get the rest of them in there. Now, this is probably going to be a longer video than I anticipated, so I'm probably going to cut it in some places, which is also unusual for me. I don't usually edit my videos because I do them all live. So if you guys see some edits, that's why. It turned out to be too long. And I don't want to bore you with a 2-hour video building a computer. It shouldn't take me 2 hours, but I don't know yet. This is actually an ambitious build for me. I usually build a little bit more economy, but I had a little extra cash this year with well, the fact that we couldn't go anywhere, couldn't go to vacation, couldn't go on any trips. Most of our shows were canceled. So I haven't been able to, we haven't been spending money on anything that we would normally be spending money on. And I mean, Gen Con was canceled, and that's a massive expense for us every year. And it was canceled. So I've got one of these. Sometimes these holes are in weird places, and getting everything lined up is a challenge. This one feels like it's cross-threading to me, so I don't like it. There we go, that feels right. You don't want to cross-thread. Damn it, this one's in a weird place too. Can't get my finger down there with the screw to hold it while I tighten it. Okay, so I got all my screws in. I'm not going to crank them down. You just want to get them hand tight. You don't want to snap the board or anything. It's not going to go anywhere. So you just want to tighten them down until you feel resistance. Just snug them up. Make sure you get them all. In this case, there are there's 9 screws in an ATX board. So make sure you don't miss one. It's easy to do that. Actually getting kind of warm. All right, this one, there we go. Didn't quite feel right, but it got it. I spent most of the morning moving files in my old computer, finding saved game. I'm sure I forgot something, but trying to find all my saved game information. That was quite a treat. All right, so we're good there. All those are down. And now I have a case, you can kind of see the top of it right here. This is for all the extra parts and screws, and so I've got a ton of hard drive screws and all that stuff in there. I probably am a little too zealous about saving that stuff, but it's good to have. Had to get another drink. Okay, so the next thing that we want to put in is going to be our CPU. So I went with the AMD Ryzen 7 3700X, which is the 8-core, 16-thread processor, 4.4 gigahertz. I didn't go with the Series 9. I didn't think for the price jump that it would be beneficial. So I didn't go with that. Now the one I bought, for some goofy reason, came with a stock cooler, which for stock coolers, it's actually pretty impressive for its size. I mean, it's a pretty good size radiator, but nobody uses stock coolers anymore. And I probably should have paid a little more attention when I bought the CPU and just not gotten it that way, but I didn't. I wasn't paying attention. So anyway, we're going to set that aside. So it comes in this little box right here, and I'll show you what I mean here. All right, so when I was talking about that little triangle on my case, there is going to be a little marker on your CPU, and a lot of times it's on the top and the bottom. In this case, there's a little bitty white dot right here, and there's a little gold triangle right there on this side. So all you do is look for that, and that's just letting you know. And if you're not sure, where'd my flashlight go? There it is. If you're not sure, you can look at the pin pattern where the triangle is, the pin pattern is missing a pin. So you really can't get this thing in there wrong. As long as you line it up and just set it down, it will fall into place. So there's a little silver lever. We're going to lift that up, and that sort of opens the sockets up. And then you just line this thing up and you set it in there. It will literally just fall into place. You don't have to force it, you don't have to push it, nothing has to be locked in. It won't go in wrong unless you force it. So you don't have to worry about that. So there's nothing to be afraid of. So you push that lever down and you lock it into place. You'll get a little resistance with the lever. It's just the little plastic carrier locking down on the pins and making sure that they're right. So that's it for the CPU. It's installed. Very, very easy. Now I'm not going to do the cooler yet because that guy will be in the way. So we're actually going to do the cooler probably last because it will be in the way. Cannot get this thing back in the box. Hold on. There we go. Back in the box. All right. So I think what I want to do next actually is I want to attach the front panel, everything. While there's nothing in my way in this case, I want to get the front panel and the side, the fans connected and everything like that. So we have some cabling that comes in from the front, and they routed it through the back for me, so it's just sitting right here. And there's a few things we've got to look at. So we should have, this case has two front fans, and so I have two front fan panels, or cables, not panels, and I'm thinking that those are going to have to get plugged into the power supply. Because I'm looking, we've got a CPU fan up here. These are 3-prong. I've got two 3-prong here, and I've got a system fan back here, and I've got a system fan there, but I don't see, I've got one fan there. I have a feeling that these are not going to reach unless I reroute one of them. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Now what I need to look at too is how many fan plugs does the cooler need? Because that's going to be kind of important too. Warranty information. You got to make sure you have enough plugs for all your fans. All right, so this one requires 2 fan plugs. And it looks like I've got 2 at the top. So that will run the cooler. That's interesting that this has 2 fans that go on the top of the thing, and then it has the radiator that gets plugged in down here. I wonder if the radiator, oh no it doesn't, the radiator, those go on the radiator. It's just showing me different ways that I can install this here. Yeah, that's for a different setup. That's not for this one. All right, so it looks like what I want to do is I want to take one of these, excuse me, one of these fans and plug it in down here on the bottom. And again, you can't mess this up. So there's like a little, 2 little fins on the socket, and those fins line up with a little plastic tab that sticks out. So you can't really plug it in wrong. It's just not, it's not possible. All right, so I'm going to take this other fan cable and I'm going to route it back through the back, and I'm going to see if it'll reach the top. It won't. With this one, it reached the top. If I did this one, no, it won't. Okay, so that is unfortunate. I think I'm going to have to use the power supply to power one of the fans, which doesn't matter, but I was hoping to plug it into the motherboard. which I kind of think I need to do. So let me see if we have a fan extension. I may have one actually in my case of goodies that I save. I sometimes have a fan extension or other cables, cords, and knickknacks and whatnots in here, but I'm not seeing one. Not to take it from one 3-prong to another 3-prong. I have a way to connect it to the power supply. The problem with that is plugging it into the power supply doesn't allow the motherboard to control it. To the best of my knowledge, it doesn't allow that anyway. Just checking to see if I have the right kind of cable to extend that, and I don't, so I need to look again. So I've got these 2 front cables for my front fan, and I don't see another place to plug it in at. If I can't get up to that top plug, because see, this one is going to plug in right here. I can turn it right. Oh my gosh, come on, turn right, there you go. It is really dark inside these cases, and your hands get in the way. And that's what's happening here, is my hand is just getting in the way of the light and I can't see the socket. There we go, to plug it into. Alright, so that's plugged in. I'm gonna have to figure out a way to route that other cable up to the top. It's gotta be caught on something. That work? So close. It's so close. Let me see if this is good enough. It's got to go around the memory. So close. This is something I'll probably edit out. Watching me fight with this cable is not educational. See, that's the CPU fan. I don't think I want to plug into that. I really don't think I want to plug into that. Oh, well, here's an extension. So we want to take this one and actually put it here. Ah, there we go. That's what we needed. So it did come with an extension. It just took me a minute to find it. And now to get this cable plugged in. Without damaging anything. All right, we're good there. I'm actually going to attach this to here for now to keep this out of the way. I don't like how much fan cable there is for this back fan, but I can't really do anything about it except hook it out of the way for now. All right, so we got that done. And now we've got the audio. We've actually got This is USB 3. We've got we've got HD audio and then another USB jack. So we should have, if we look in here, we've got a USB 3 port, which is where this guy plugs into. We got another USB port, which is where this guy plugs into. And then we should have an audio, which we do right there. So this is to cover the front audio, not the back audio. Now with your audio, you're going to have one missing pin. So the trick to plugging your audio in is to find the missing pin and the missing hole in the socket so that you know which direction it goes in. And that's pretty much the same thing with everything. Your USB jack is going to have a missing socket, a missing hole, and there's going to be a missing pin in the plug. And same thing with the USB 3, but the USB 3, they gave me a little notch here, so that one's easy to find. So this will take care of the two front USB 3 ports. If I can get her plugged in here. Alright, that one snaps in. All the rest of them just go in snug. Just make sure they're in. Alright, and now you have this thing, all these little single plugs here. This is like the front power, the front reset, all the lights on the front and everything. Now, like I said, if you're lucky, your manufacturer supplied you a handy little plug so that you can plug all those in and then plug this into the motherboard. It makes things, wow, this plastic is hard to get into, surprisingly enough. This makes it a little easier to hook that up because it can actually be challenging to see which way those plugs go when you're trying to look down at the motherboard. So they should be labeled. Like I've got power switch, speaker, power LED, and everything here. And the problem is they did not mark, oh, that's nice. They did not mark positive and negative on the doubles, just on the single. Well, they did mark it on that double, just not the other doubles. All right, so we need to find the power LED, positive, negative, is right here. And it kind of holds them in, which is nice. So then we got the HDD, the hard drive LED, which is right there. So we just kind of slide this in. And it snaps in. And now we have the reset switch, power switch. And they didn't mark, I'm guessing, the little triangle is positive, would be my guess. The problem is, if you do these wrong, it just won't boot, and you won't know why. So that's the first thing you check, is that you didn't mix those up. And a lot of times you can tell because of the you can tell because one cable will be like white, but in this case they didn't do that. They're all black cables. So I'm gonna take an educated guess here and say that the little triangle is pointing me toward the positive. So and there is no resets. Oh, there's the reset switch. So the reset switch, positive, we're going to say it goes in like so. Hopefully I'm right. I hate redoing this part if it's wrong. I've had to do that before. And the power switch is right there. And we're going to say that's positive. didn't mark it for us. Well, there's a little white line. Darn it. Now I'm doubting myself. There's a little white line. And I can't tell if that's what that means or not. So we will find out when I go to power it up. If it just doesn't power on, it could be that. All right, and then there's usually a speaker, which you don't necessarily have to put in, but it is, it's probably a good idea to put that in. All right, so now we look at our socket. So now, rather than trying to fit all those down in here where we can't hardly see because of our fingers, I can just look at this thing here and go, well, that's the power LED. There's the 4 prongs. You just have to look at the number of prongs. We got 4 and 3, and then a whole line. So I'm thinking we go in like so. And again, it's one of those things where as long as you're not forcing it, you can't break it. The minute you try to force that in there, that's when you're going to run into problems. All right, so that has our power, our front, all of our front cables, all of our front audio, front USB, and everything is plugged in there. So now, we're going to do our power supply. Now I went with an EVGA 650. 650 is a little more than I needed, but I want some expandability with this system too. I want this system to last me several years, and that didn't open the way I wanted it to. And I also wanted a modular system this time. Modular systems are a little more expensive, but what that means, if you don't know, like if you know anything about power supplies, you've seen them before, usually they have a big old chunk of cable coming off of them. And when you build a computer, you wind up only using some of them. You don't use them all. So then you got to hide a big old chunk of cable that you didn't need. So a modular system, and even a semi-modular system, the power supply doesn't have that. It's just like this, and then it's got all these plugs here for all the different cables. So you only need to plug in what you actually need to use. So in this case, I don't have to use all of these cables. So I am going to get them all out because I know I'm going to use some of them. Especially, I mean, there's some you just can't get away with. New power cable, I'm going to keep that. And then this is an extender, I guess, for the, I'm not sure what that's going to be for, if I even need to use that. I've never seen that on one before. We've got some Velcro, EVGA little Velcro straps here, so that's kind of cool. And then we got our screws, which are very important. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand this girl up, because the power supply gets installed in the bottom. If you haven't built a computer in the last couple of years, they've moved the power supplies to the bottom, which isn't a terrible thing, except in my last house was super dusty on the floor, so it was a bad thing. But here, new house, we shouldn't have that problem. And hopefully you didn't hear that jerk off on his motorcycle who just tore by, making all kinds of noise. All right, so what I want to do is turn this. So normally when you install these, the fan would point down, but in this case it goes sideways. So I'm going to put it like so that the fan is pointing toward the vent. There's a vent, going to be a vent back here. And just line it up, looking for the screw holes here so that I get everything installed correctly. Oh, that's cute. Screw holes don't line up. Well, yeah, they do. You have to look and see, because there's slots and there's holes, and sometimes the screw will go in one of the slots that are cut out of the frame, and then sometimes they go in the actual what looks like a screw hole. Just make sure you're actually putting the screw into a screw hole, because the back of the power supply has got like sort of a web mesh frame on it, and you don't want to put a screw through that, obviously. So just pay attention. That's the big thing with building the computer, building the computer. When you're building a computer, is just paying attention. Don't just dive in and do something. Dry fit it, if you're familiar with that term. Line things up before, like I lined the motherboard up before I started screwing it in. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to have any issues before I started. You don't want to get halfway through connecting everything and then find out something's not going to work or something is going to be broken. All right, so now I can actually plug things in as needed rather than having a big bunch of cabling coming off of everything. So now, hopefully, I don't need an extension for this. So the cables are marked for me. Which side goes into the power supply? It says PSU right there, and then it says MB right here. So I know that that's my motherboard side. Cables can be pretty stiff. I'm gonna give them a good flexing here. And the first one I know I'm always going to need is the the big, what is it, 20? I think it's a 20 20 socket power cable. And it's going to be the theme today, but just like everything else, these power cables have a certain way that they go in. And you really can't put them in wrong unless you try to force it. So that's going to be our sort of our theme today, is don't try to force it. If you force it, you will break something. Just looking to see which hole I need to come through next to the motherboard to get this power. This is going to be a snug fit because this power supply sits a little bit farther down than in most cases. So you'll notice I guess I would describe them as, they're shaped like little houses, the way the prongs go on these sockets. So you just look for that, and I think this one's going to actually be short. Is that what this is for? To extend that? That can't be right. No, that's not to extend that. I don't think this one's actually going to fit. I'm looking to make sure I'm going the right direction with it. I may have to let my dog out. Hold on. Yeah, we're going to run into a problem here, I think. That's unfortunate. I don't know what to do. I didn't get an extension for this one. I got an extension for the other one, for the 8, but not for the 20. Usually what you do here is you route it a different way. Oh, hold on, hold on. I got it. It is so tight though. It's like barely the right length, but that's okay. You just want to make sure it snaps. It's got a little clip that snaps on little plastic socket. Just make sure that snaps, and that means you're in. And I'm just giving it a little tug to make sure it doesn't come right off. Now I'm gonna pause it real quick and let the dog out. All right, welcome back. Sorry about that. I had to let the dog out, get another drink. I was going to say two things that I forgot to mention. Save your boxes. You're going to want to sell stuff. I'm going to have computer parts go on eBay as soon as this is up and running and doing a good job. So you want to save your boxes. It's easier to sell and ship if you still have the original packaging. Also, you're going to want something to hold on to the screws that you take out. Like I've got all the loose screws here. Sorry, that's ringing. I've got all the loose screws here that came with everything, but the screws I actually took out of the case that need to go back, I don't want to get them mixed up with anything else. So any screws that you take out of things, you want to put somewhere safe so that you can find them again. All right, so now the other power cord that is pretty much required is the 8 that goes to the top of the top of the motherboard. And I'm just checking because some of them are also, that's the SATA. I want to make sure that I'm not grabbing the one that goes to the what's the word I'm thinking of? The video card. That's SATA. I think I've got the right, well, nope, there it is. Your CPU power cord is an 8. It's an 8 socket power cord, and this is labeled CPU. So I know this is the CPU one. And it also came with an extender because the power supply is so far down, and it also has, I think, this 4-part or 4-prong offshoot, so to speak, is for the closed loop cooler. But we'll see if it needs that. So we're going to plug this back in here. We got one side that goes to the power supply, and now things are hard to see. So where's my flashlight? There's my flashlight. There's the CPU, it's marked. Fell out on me. These cables are very stiff. They've been wrapped up and bent in the box for who knows how long. So sometimes you need to give them a little, just flex them a little bit, make them a little more pliable. You don't want to pull on them or bend them or anything like that. Just want to kind of give them a little bit of a straightening out. It'll help make it easier to work with. This is giving me trouble. I wonder if I'm using the wrong end. I bet I am. Yep, that's probably it. So this one's not marked to tell me which end goes where. Yeah, I got to rely on these tabs. So I was trying to put the wrong end. And I'm going to go under. You can't see that, but I'm going under the motherboard power to give myself just a little extra room, because this cable's going to be short, I think. It may or may not be. It may actually work. We'll see. It's got to come through here. Now we're going to lay her down. Now I did put a towel, darn it. I put a towel down on my table for 2 reasons. One, so that if I drop a screw, it doesn't go flying across the kitchen, bouncing off the table, but also so I don't scratch my table with the case. This case has got a lot of steel edges, and I've got a nice dining room table that I really don't want to scratch up. So there's a couple purposes to putting a towel down. Just double checking how this lines up. Second one's not wanting to sit down there. I don't want to force it, but I know I've got it lined up. There we go. Just heard the little click of the socket connecting. All right, let me get a drink here. If you have any questions, hit me up on Twitter at TJ Bierschbach. You can find that in the video description below, or comment on the video. There's all kinds of different ways to get a hold of me, because you know, some of this stuff is hard to describe if you've never done it before. If you're not sure, by all means ask questions. I'm not opposed to answering your questions about what I'm doing or how I'm doing it. So definitely don't want to, you know, discourage you from asking questions. All right, so now I'm just deciding, because I've never put on, my old system has a closed loop cooler, but it's not the same kind of radiator. It actually installed on the back of the case. It was very easy to install. This one installs either on the top or down here, and I'm not sure how I want to do it, so I don't know if I want to do the GPU next. I think I do, because I want to get it in and get the power cable set so that I know where I can run the coolers for the radiator. So I went with the nVidia. I've been an nVidia guy all my life. I had an AMD years ago, and I found their service to be garbage, their drivers to be awful, and the card to generally be worthless. Now that could have changed since then, but I have had friends who have had issues with AMD, or not AMD, with AMD, the Radeon cards. So I like AMD for their CPUs, because for the price, it's really hard to not like them. So we're going to get crinkly here again, so we have another anti-static bag. Which those you also want to keep, because if you sell your motherboard or your graphics card, you want to ship it in this bag. It's only, you know, the decent thing to do for your customer, your client, or whatever. All right, so now looking at this card, it's got an HDMI port, which is good, and a DVI port, which is good because I have one of each on my monitors. And it's got a display port, which is probably a good thing, because at some point I want to get a curve, and I want to keep my other two monitors, so I'm actually going to need 3 display ports, and this has 3, so that's a good thing. Alright, so I'm just pulling out the plastic like we talked about before. Check for that plastic that'll be attached to things. You don't want that becoming a permanent fixture in your computer. Alright, so this one has a cover on the PCI Express port, or slot. Alright, so your motherboard may or may not have more than one PCI Express port. In this case, I have 3. I have a 16, a 1, and a 1.2. I'm going to go with the 16, obviously. So what I want to see, move this cable here. I want to see where it's going to line up in the back. Oh, that little rubber thing came off too. Almost dropped it. Alright, so it goes in like so. It can't go in, you know, any other way. So what I need to do is see there's these back panels that are going to have to come off in order for me to use this card. And I'm just seeing which one. So again, I'm dry fitting it to make sure I take off the right panels. And I just forgot which two to take off. It's those two. So you'll see these little thumb screws. Sometimes those thumb screws are pretty tight, so just give them a little quick turn with your screwdriver. And I'm going to take those off. And I'm going to save them, because in the event I sell this case, like my previous case, I'm selling it. I'm going to put the panel. I still have the back panels. I'm going to put those back in. Still have the front panel, because I'm actually going to take the DVD drive out of it, the Blu-ray drive, and put it in this. I'm going to scavenge some parts. I scavenge where I can, if I can. Like my old computer has another SSD in it, which is currently running its operating system. That's going to come out and go in here for extra storage once I get this thing running. And I say once I get it running because you never know when you're building a computer. Alright, so I should show you this real quick. PCI Express port, if you can see this, there's a little notch right here and there's a little tab. You really can't do this wrong. If you're facing this toward the back of the computer, you can't put this in the wrong slot. You just want to make sure you line that notch up. And it'll go in nice and smooth. You just want to give it steady, even downward pressure. Get everything lined up, look at it, make sure it's lined up. It'll just sit there, and then just push it down ever so gently, and it'll pop in. And I give it a little snug, a little push. You don't want to push too hard because your motherboard's under there. All right, now those two thumb screws I took out, what the hell did I do with them? I set them down. There they are. There's one. No, that's not it. Oh, damn. There they are. You want to put those back in because your video card should have a little metal plate on the back of it, and it should have little screw holes that line up with the screw holes that you just took out. That way you can help support the weight of your video card. Now I was worried about space inside. I'll show you real quick if you can see it. I was worried about how big the video card was going to be. But can you see? Let me see if I can get it here. See how much space there is between the video card and the front of the case? So yeah, I didn't have to worry about size there. Alright, so this has an 8-port power. Alright, so now we got a decision to make. I probably want to come through right here. So I want to find the 8-port. Here's the 8-port power. But that's got a split because it's for SLI. I'm going to look and see if there's a single. There is a single. Because I'm not doing that. I'm not doing SLI. So I don't need to split the power. I only need one. I don't want extra plugs in there if I don't. That's why I bought a modular power supply, so I didn't have to have extra cabling in my computer. I'm not building like a super LED, you know, clean build like a lot of people do, where everything's hidden. But I do want some of the stuff to actually be, you know, hidden. All right, so lining this up, I'm going to look at the power supply. There's VGA1, VGA. I think it's funny it's called VGA. We haven't used VGA sockets in years, but it's still called VGA power on this power supply. All right, that popped in, and I'm going to come in right here. There we go. Oh, I should come up through here first. Hold on. There's a little support rail back here. I got to go under that first. And I'm only going to pull this in as far as I need to hook her up. Hopefully you guys this is useful for you. I know this is probably a longer video. It's definitely a longer video than I normally do for something like this. I mean, I've had 2-hour game streams before, so maybe not. I'm trying to look. I don't know how long the recording's been going on. An hour and 5 minutes. That's not bad. All right. So now I got her hooked up, and see that cable's kind of ugly there. So I don't want to yank it back, but I want to sort of tug it back just a little bit, just so it's nice and clean, you know. So I know it's hard to see because everything's black here, but that's kind of why you get a flashlight, because everything's black. Now I know a lot of this stuff has LED lights on it, so when I fire this thing up, I think it's going to get like super bright. I don't know, we'll see. All right, so one of the other things I'm going to go ahead and pop in before I do the cooler is the memory. Now I went with Corsair Vengeance Pro DDR4. It's two 16 gig chips. 3200 megahertz is the speed. Now one of the things I want to look at, your motherboard will sometimes tell you if the memory should be installed a certain way, and I think this one, it looks to me like I'm supposed to put it in the A2 and B2 ports first, meaning stagger them. There's usually a little diagram, but I also look at the owner's manual for installing memory, and it should tell me if I'm only using 2, because most of your motherboards, I don't think I've ever seen a newer motherboard that doesn't have 4 slots. Sometimes you can install the memory right next to each other, and other times you need to stagger them if you've only got 2 cards. So that's one thing you want to double check before you put your memory in. I'm looking for it here. Specifications. Installing expansion cards, installing the memory. Installing the memory. If you have 2 modules, yes, I need to use the A2 and the B2 port. Yeah, so it tells you recommended dual channel memory configuration. If you have 2 modules, use the A2 and the B2 port. So that's how we're going to install our memory. Sometimes you'll see them color-coded. All the sockets in this one are black. The last motherboard I had, they were color-coded. They were like, 2 of them were gray and 2 of them were blue, so you could tell which ones went together. If in doubt, look at the manual. The manual will tell you the best way to install it. Again, I'm keeping the thing. All right, so if you can see that right here, there's a notch right here. I don't know if you can see it very well. You can kind of see if I turn it to the light there. You'll see a similar notch in your the memory socket. So you really can't put it in wrong. As long as you line things up first. And there's 2 little plastic like levers on the ends. You just kind of open those up. So I'm looking, right here. Okay, so I just open them up. And if you do it right, when you push them down, they will actually close those tabs. Sorry, flashlight pointed at you. They will close those tabs when they're seated properly. So you just give it steady, even pressure until those 2 tabs close, and then you know you've got it installed right. Looking again to make sure, just double checking, because I don't want any memory issues with my first build. And it's not that it's going to damage the memory if you put it in wrong, it just won't read it right. It may not read it right. So one thing to check when you launch Windows is just see how much memory Windows says you have. If it doesn't say you have the right amount, then you may have put your memory in wrong. Could also mean your memory's bad. but it probably just means you put the memory in wrong, and you need to double check. So I don't know if you heard that, but they popped, they snapped in. I'm just double checking that I'm seating it right. I think I was about to seat that one wrong. Yeah, I was. I mean, you really can't. Again, what is our statement for the day? Don't force it. Little George W. Bush there. Don't force it. All right, so I've got this fan here, this cable that I don't like, kind of in my way. So I'm going to take that cable over here real quick, and I'm going to use this little bread tie that came with it, and I'm going to secure it to the back of the case there, so it's out of my way and I don't see it anymore. All right. So we have the memory in, we have the GPU in, we've got the processor in, we've got the power supply in, we have got the power supply connected to the motherboard, we've got it connected to the video card, we've got it connects to the motherboard in two places. You've got motherboard power and CPU power, so just look for that. You've got to make sure they're both connected. We've got all the front panel buttons and lights connected to the bottom, including the USB ports, USB 2 and 3, and the audio from the front panel is connected. I am going to go ahead and put in the SSD drive next, because again, the cooler is the one factor that I don't know how it's all going to route. And I still have to route the cabling and the power for the SSD. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. A handy dandy Bear Grylls pocket knife. Alright, so now I bought, I won't need it yet, but I did buy thermal paste. I have thermal paste. I used to buy Zalman coolers. Hold on, I'm going to get a drink here. It's getting warm in my kitchen. I used to buy Zalman coolers exclusively, and I love those because they're great coolers, but they also came with these little nail file polish bottles of thermal paste, which, believe it or not, well, it's looking a little dry. That's what I was afraid of. What I didn't want to do was get into this build and not have thermal paste, because these are a few years old and I don't know. Yeah, these are looking a little dry. I'm not sure if I'd actually get, maybe would get something out of those, but I didn't want to take the chance. Now what I like about those is they've got a little brush, and this that I bought doesn't have a little brush. So when we get to that point, I don't know if I'm going to need it. Sometimes your cooler comes with thermal paste installed. Just got to watch for that. All right, so we were on this guy. Little bitty SSD here. All right, so this case, every case is going to be a little different, but your case should have some sort of hard drive carrier that goes in the slots. This one has 3. In this case, it holds a standard hard drive between these 2 pins. You can't see them, but there's 4 pins here. And then the SSD has little screw holes. Now what I need to find, my case, would it come with hard drive screws? I need to see what they look like, so I don't grab the wrong ones. 3.5 hard drive, 2.5 hard drive is the same screws that I used for the motherboard, so they should be easy to find. I need 1. There's 2, 3, nope, that's not right, 3, 4. Especially with the SSD, you want to make sure you get the right ones, because if you do it wrong, you could damage them. Now what I need to see is which direction do I need to install this so that the cables, okay, the cables are going to come out this back side here, so I'm going to install it facing that way. so that our cables are hidden again. So very carefully. SSDs are pretty much all there is now. This motherboard doesn't even have an IDE port for an old style hard drive. So even if I wanted to put, I have an old hard drive that I was going to use, and I didn't even think about that when I bought the motherboard. I didn't even think I better make sure it has an IDE port. I forgot that. I think this is this the wrong, nope, it's not the wrong screw. The screws seem to be turning for a lot longer than I think it should have, and I was afraid it was too small. So we just screw these in there, nice and hand tight. You don't need to crank anything down. There's no moving parts here that are going to go flying off on us. And the last thing you want to do is crank one of these circuit boards or hard drives down so tight that you bend something or break it. So again, don't force it. It's going to be like our little I can't even think of the name that I'm going for there. Little Mr. Rogers saying for this episode, don't force it. This is I didn't tell you, this is a 1 terabyte Samsung, 860. I didn't go with, so everybody's really, excited about the what are they called, NAC or NCD or whatever, SSD drives that connect directly to the motherboard. I can put, I think, 2 of those in here. I didn't do that because the cost to benefit ratio just wasn't there. They cost too much for what they do. They're really not that much faster than a standard SSD. So it really didn't make any sense to me to go with that. All right, so now I've got 2. I know I'm going to be putting 2 SATA drives in here for sure, and I'll probably be adding more. And this comes with enough to hook up all 5. So it has 5 hard drive carriers. It comes with enough cords to hook up all 5. So what I want to be careful of is that I get the one, well, oh, that has 3. Okay, now this is good. That will carry all 3. This will carry all 3. I'm not going to be putting all 5 in here. At the most, I might put 1 more. But I'm definitely putting 2. I'm taking one of them out of my old computer, and it's going in here. And then I'll probably buy a new one when they go on sale around Thanksgiving. Alright, so I need to find my SATA 1, SATA 2. And I've got my Blu-ray player, which is also a SATA. So it's going to need that power as well. I'm going to go around this table here. And I'm going to come up through here. You can't see what I'm doing, but basically there's a support rail on the back of this case that divides the top part from the bottom part. And I'm just making sure that I'm missing that. I think I'm actually going to wind up having to get a SATA extension, which I think I have somewhere, to plug in my Blu-ray player. I think. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get away with the Blu-ray player without getting an extension, because this won't reach up there. Alright, so again, you can't do this wrong. The SATA jacks are L-shaped. They only go one way. I'm just putting my hand up here so I don't put a lot of pressure on the screws. Alright, I'm going to push that down through here. I'm just doing a little wire maintenance on this back side here, just so things are kind of out of the way for now, because I don't need them to be moved around much. Alright, so now The last thing that I need to connect is the actual SATA data cable, SATA data cable. All right, so we have two different ends and two different options here. So I could choose from, one's like an L-shaped carrier, and then the other end is straight, and then this one is, both ends are straight. I think I'm going to go with the L-shaped one on this one, and I have some extras too for the next SSD. I'm just kind of flexing it to make it pliable here. All right, so I'm plugging it in. Again, it's L-shaped. You can't plug this in wrong unless you force it, and unless you can't see it, and then you got to pay attention to what you're doing here, which I wasn't doing for a second. Alright, I think I'm connected. It didn't snap like I would expect it to. This plastic, so the one thing I don't like about this case already is this plastic carrier for the hard drive tray has so much flex in it. Oh, sorry, Doc, I just scared my dog. He was sleeping at my feet and I bumped him. It has flex in it, so when I'm pushing the cable and trying to connect it, it's moving on me and it's making it hard to determine if I've connected it right. All right, so we're going to come up through, I've got a couple options here. I'm going to come up through the bottom, just far enough to connect it. Oh, that's not going to work. I see why that's a problem. So this actually turns the cable the wrong way. So I'm going to have to go with the other one. Oh, shoot. That's all right. So we'll put this away for a minute and find the other one. Give it some flex, straighten it out. I know the video quality on this isn't fantastic. I wish it was better. Again, we're stuck with the limitations of the space I have to work with. We're not in the studio, in the Fragmenbeer Studios that is just down the hall, my office. Only because I don't have the room to do this in there. I don't have a table like this. I don't have, it would be very cramped. When you're doing work like this, the last thing you want to do is get yourself all cramped up. You know, you don't want to. I'm just looking to see if there's a particular way. One thing I want to double check. Let's make sure. It shouldn't matter which one of these I plug it into, because when I boot this computer and we start with Windows, it's going to tell me, it's going to ask me which I want my boot drive to be. I just want to make sure that there's no preferred SATA for your primary hard drive. Always double check. It's the one thing, if you're ever in doubt, if you're ever not sure, just double check. SATA connected with conform to SATA 6 standards, compatible with SATA 3, SATA 1. Each SATA connector supports a single device. So they're all SATA 3s. It does not say, that there is a preference. So I can pretty much plug it into whichever one I want. It does not matter. So we're going to go into this first one here. And I'm going to pull that cable back through. I don't want to bend anything, but I just want to take some of the slack out back here, so that we have that nice clean look going through. Okay, so now I've got power to the SSD. I've got the SSD connected to the motherboard. And this is a checklist I'm running through. I'm not just telling you this for your benefit. It is for your benefit, but it's for my benefit too. Running through a checklist so that you don't forget something is pretty good, it's pretty good practice when you're building a computer. Think about all the ways that the computer works, what has to have power, what has to boot, what has to do this, what has to do that. The idea that PC Gamer put out that building a computer yourself is unattainable is horse crap, like I said. Anybody with a modicum of hardware knowledge and how a computer works can do this. And you can build computers for a lot less than this. Like this computer, I'm not going to give you an exact figure, but it was over $1,000 and under $2,000 to build this computer. You can build, I've built budget gaming PCs for less than $1,000 for the box. If you've got everything else and you just need the box, you know, you're good at $1,000 or less. Computers to work at home, just to do like internet, you need to build a computer for your mom because she, you know, every once in a while likes to play an online game, but most of the time she uses it for email and checking Facebook. You could build one of those for $300 or $400 or less. So the idea that it's unattainable or that it's something that you just can't do is stupid. And the idea that it's expensive is also dumb. If I were to build this same computer from, say, Alienware, it would probably cost, you know, in excess of $4,000, probably more. I'll have an exact figure. I'll probably post it because I always do check after I build a new computer. I take my specs to like Alienware. Just to see for my own peace of mind how much money I saved by building it myself. You would be surprised how easy this is and how much money you can save building it yourself. All right, so the last thing we need to do, we have got, just going to run through my checklist in my head again. We've got the CPU installed, we've got the motherboard, the memory, the graphics card, we've got a hard drive, we've got the power supply. We've got the power supply, hard drive, power to the video card, power to the CPU and the motherboard. We've got all the front panels connected. The only thing we have to do is connect the CPU cooler. And this is new on me. This is something I've not installed one like this before, so this may take me a little bit to get this one figured out. Because again, my other one was a very simple closed loop cooler system. This one is a little bit more complicated because it has a larger radiator and it's going to get installed further down the box, I think it is. So I don't want any of the Intel stuff, but it says for Intel and AMD, there's some things I need to do. So let's first get this bad boy out. All right, this is my Cooler Master, what is it? Cooler Master Master Liquid ML240 closed loop liquid cooler. So now what I want to do is I kind of want to dry fit things real quick. So the theory is that this would sit down here and that's not going to happen. That's why I wanted to be sure. So there's my two power cables. And it's a good thing I didn't use the power cables at the top because we need those. So this is going to have to get installed on the top of the case. It's not going to fit down here and reach up there. It's just not, the coolant tubes are not long enough. So I'm sure I'm going to pull a Henry and install this upside down, but I'm not going to take it apart if I do, because once this bad boy gets installed, it's installed. I'm not taking that apart. All right, so first thing we need to do for all systems, AMD or otherwise, we need to apply our, we need to take this little plastic dealer off. Now this did not come pre-applied with cooling thermal paste. So we have to apply our own thermal paste, which is not a bad thing. A lot of times when they come applied with thermal paste, they don't come with enough, or it's kind of spotty, or I'm not sure I trust it. So I'm not sure I wouldn't have just removed it and done my own anyway. All right, so we have this little tube. I haven't used these before in this tube thing. So we need to apply some thermal paste, and I'm actually going to use the little brush from one of these to spread it around to smooth it off. Now you want to be very thin with your thermal paste. It just needs to be a thin gray layer so that you don't see any of the silver of the CPU. So don't put too much on, put a little bit on, spread it around. You could use a Q-tip, a nail file, or not a nail file, a nail polish brush. I'm going to get my lights so I can see what I'm doing here. The key is thin layer all the way out to the edges, and don't get it on any of the other components. Now you're not going to hurt anything if you get thermal paste on something in the, if you get a little spot. What you don't want to do is just smear it all over something inside on the motherboard. You just want to be nice and smooth and careful. This is actually going to take a couple of minutes here because this stuff, I don't want to put too much on because it's not like this other stuff from Zalman with the nail file thing. You can't really over apply it, but this little squeeze tube, if I push too much out, I can't put it back. So I don't want to overdo it here. I'm just kind of spreading it around. It's actually two different consistencies. When it first came out of the tube, it was really thin, and now it's more of a paste. So I want to make sure that I kind of spread it evenly from where it was thinner to where it has gotten very thick and sticky. I know that sounds great, right? You don't want the thin, sticky stuff in your computer case. Sorry kids, this is an adult channel. We're drinking beer at Frags and Beer, and we're talking about the sticky stuff in your computer. If you're one of those freaks watching the hentai, that should get you going, right? Don't get the sticky stuff on your CPU. Keep that out of your computer. Alright, almost there. I just want to smooth it out. I've got it completely covered. I'm just kind of evening out the layer. So I think I'm going to keep this little box, or this little bottle, even if I can't use the thermal paste that's in it, because that brush was very handy for applying that. All right, so now we've got that done. The next thing we need to do, sorry dog, I bumped you again. You're right at my feet. My dog is right at my feet. All right, so now we have what I need to look at is where are the screw holes on the top here. Okay, so I'm going to have pretty much like screw holes and screw slots all the way along. I'm going to have to take off one of these little filter panels off the top. And this thing is going to get screwed on up here. I'm just kind of doing a quick test fit to see how this is going to go. I think it's going to go right here. Okay. Yeah, that's going to work. Those line up. So the holes are lining up with the holes in the ventilation. So that's going to have to be how this gets installed. So I'm wondering if I want to put those on first or no. Trying to look and see. What I don't want to do is bend this tube or kink this tube here. So it's going to go on like so, and this is going to go up here like that. All right. These are kind of a pain to work with, so just be careful. Don't crimp the tube. All right, so I'm looking for not this part or that part. That's actually the wrong parts. There is, and they're labeled, it looks like, or they're not. You got a lot of different screws and sockets. Oh, and it came with its own thermal paste. So I didn't necessarily need to do what I just did. I did not need to use thermal paste or buy my own thermal paste. But you never know. You don't want to get your cooler and go to do your install and not have thermal paste, because then you're screwed. You have no other choice. The only thing you can do is wait for your build and start over, you know, or start later, which I hate doing. It's bad enough I had to wait a week to get these parts, but then once I got them, if I had to wait to build it because I needed something as simple as thermal paste, and I don't know about you, but there's nowhere around here for me to buy that. So yeah, I'd have been all right. So where are we at? Hour and 36. So 2-hour build. Not too bad. We're going to be pretty close to 2 hours. I'm not going to run through the whole installing Windows and doing all that with you. That would be mind-numbing. I don't want to do it, but I have to. So we're going to get the cooler installed, and then we're going to cut it. I'm going to edit the video and get it uploaded to you, which you guys don't need to know that. It'll be uploaded when it's uploaded. And then I will show you sort of, I'll probably give you an update after the fact when it's done. So we need, there's 4 screws that we need, and of course didn't come in the same package, so I need to find, I think it's those. There's a lot of screws that came with this cooler. So this cooler is designed to fit like every socket type. I keep looking at my laptop and not at the camera when I'm talking to you. I'm sorry about that. Like I said, I'm used to doing these live. I'm not used to doing a separate sort of remote broadcast, if you will, from the dining room of the Gray Raven homestead. All right, so these little deals are what hook onto the cooler, or the motherboard's cooler socket. So I just need to attach these, and I'm trying to make sure I get them on there right. They go on top. Oh, good question. It looks like they do go on top. Okay, so I want to make sure this is right. All of my previous builds were done with the same coolers except the last one. So, and this is different from the last one, so it's still kind of foreign to me how these get put together. But read your instructions. If you're not sure, read them again. And I don't think these fit. I think I've got the wrong screws, but I'm not sure. Okay, you know what? They're labeled, so how about I do this? I think I had the wrong screws. Screw H. There's only 4 of them. There's only 4 of screw H. So my guess is it's those. There's 4 of those. I had the wrong screw, that's why things weren't fitting. That comes along with our saying of the day. Since I didn't try to force those screws in, I didn't screw up my part. They just didn't want to turn in by hand. So that should be your indication that you've got the wrong thing. So now, yeah, that's better. That fits a lot better. So now we get to juggle. This is the tricky part, is holding apart. I'm going to set these screws down. Holding apart while you're trying to hold the screwdriver and the screws and all the parts steady at the same time. Oh, I managed to line those up the first time. Can't believe that. All right, that's tight. Okay, so there's two little, and this is pretty standard on AMD. It was the same on AMD 3. It looks to be the same on AMD 4. There's two little like tabs sticking out from around the CPU, and these little box toggle things fit over that and then tighten down, and that's how it worked on AM3 as well. It wasn't quite as simple as this looks like it's going to be to get it connected to that, but that's how it connected. So it looks like right side up will direct the cooler tubes, if you will, over the memory this way. So I'm going to, what I don't want to do is drop anything down on that thermal paste until I get the cooler set. Alright, so I need to hook that over that. Looking to make sure they don't go a different way. Hopefully you can hear me while I'm talking down into the computer like this. Trying to hook it over. I think this one's hooked. Just trying to get this one hooked. So they've got little thumb screws and little boxes, these little metal boxes that hook down over the frame of this little plastic kind of connector here. And I'm not showing it to you. A, you wouldn't be able to see it, but B, yours may be different. The important thing is to look ahead of time at how the cooler connects in your particular setup. Why are you not wanting to connect? I've got one of them hooked up, and then this one is giving me some trouble, and I don't know why. Can't see it. There we go. That got it. So then I just have to tighten the thumb screws down. So they're designed in a way so that everything lines up. You can't really get it off center as long as you follow the frame. I just can't get this now. This one doesn't want to tighten down for me. Some of the setup things that I thought about while I'm trying to get this screw tightened is make sure your case has enough fans. You don't need to overdo it. You don't need 5 or 8 fans. The last I bought a high airflow from Cooler Master with my last couple of builds, and it had so many fans in it, and it was overkill. It was too many fans. You can get too many because you get to the point where they're not doing anything. You either get negative airflow where it's just not pulling anything in, or damn it, this one's just, I think I loosened it trying to get it hooked on there, and I think I loosened it too much. Yeah, it's just like free spinning on there, and I don't know what I've done wrong, so I need to take it off. As frustrating as that is, I don't want to, but I don't know what I've done wrong, and I can't leave it. It's not tight. Now I can't get it unhooked. I had trouble getting it hooked, and now there we go. And I couldn't get it unhooked. All right, so what's wrong here? What's wrong here? Okay, there we go. I just could not get that to turn. And I think I've got it now. All right, so we got the thermal paste is still there. I didn't botch that up too bad. It's just not as clean, which is going to bother me a little bit, but not to the extent that I need to redo it or anything like that. So I'm going to get this one hooked. And now I'm going to try to get this one hooked. So again, there's these two little plastic tabs sticking off either side of the CPU. And I just got to get these metal hooks under it. There we go. And tighten down the screws, which pulls the cooler down on top of the CPU. All right, so that's good. I'm just giving it some, just snugging it up. You want to make sure this part needs to be good and tight. You don't want it too tight. You don't want to break anything, but you need it good and snug. You don't want a lot of space. The cooler needs to be in contact, if you can still hear me. The cooler needs to be in contact with the CPU. Otherwise, that copper plate can't pull the heat off of it and cool it. And that's what it's doing. That's how it works. All right, so now I need to look at, we've got two different plugs here. And it's looking like I can run a lot of different things to this. So one of these plugs just goes right into the motherboard. So we're going to go ahead and put this right in there into the CPU. So there's two CPU power plugs right above the power plug for the fan, and then there's power for this part. And this is the part I'm not sure about. I got to figure out how these are connected. So these fans, okay. So these fans have their own connection, and I think they get screwed into the radiator. Okay. So the radiator, the really long screws. Okay, I see what we got to do here. All right, so this is going to be tricky. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to run you through how to put all these screws in, because your cooler and radiator and all that may be different. But the last thing I'm doing, obviously, because it's going to be in the way, is putting in the cooler. So I'm going to stand this up real quick so you can see why this is in the way. So see these big fat tubes here? I didn't want to fight these. These are going to go over the top of the memory. I didn't want to have to fight these to try to build everything. So I don't know if you can see that with the light. I'm trying to, but everything's black in there, so obviously it's difficult to see. But I'm not going to do that. You don't need to see that on a video. Your cooler may not be the same. If you do have questions about installing your cooler, let me know. Try to set this somewhere where it doesn't damage anything, because it's probably going to take me a few minutes to figure this one out. I've never built one like this. I've never done it. So there's no point in you guys watching me fumble around while I try to do it. I will give you an update on this after I get everything running. If I get Windows installed and everything boots up perfectly, you're obviously going to hear about it, because I'm going to be pretty excited. I've only had one other build go that smooth where I put everything together, launched it, and everything worked. Usually there's something that I have to go back and redo or look at, or something I didn't hook up right. It's usually those little power prongs on the motherboard. I didn't get one of those in the right spot, so the power button doesn't work or something ridiculous. So anyway, again, leave comments, ask questions in the chat, in the comment section. Hit me up on Twitter or Facebook. Check out my books at the link below. All of my information is in the video description that will be there when I upload this. I may or may not edit it. I love live video, and I love, I make mistakes. I don't care. I hate seeing cuts in videos. So we'll see what I do with it. But we are right at almost 2 hours, so that's a pretty typical video for Frags and Beer. Check out the other content on my channel. Let me know what you think. I'm going to be bringing more content, I hope, with this to Saturday. I'm going to fire up Saturday Randomness again, which, if you remember, was my Saturday morning show. I may just do it on different times on Saturdays, but I'm really looking forward to bringing you guys some new content with that. And again, if you're looking for any beard product, BeardWizard99, use that coupon code at thebeardstruggle.com, save 15%. I do use the product, and I do really like it, so I'm not just blowing smoke to get you guys to use my coupon code. It's actually it's a good deal, and it's a good product. So anyway, I'm going to cut it there. You guys have a fantastic evening. Good luck on your builds. Ask me questions. I've built, I don't know how many computers now over the years, and everything's a little different, but I'm more than willing to help and answer questions. This is not unattainable. It's not outside your skill set. This is something almost anybody can do if you just take your time, read the instructions, and don't force it. So I will see you guys again soon with more content, and let me know what you think. Much love.